Alright, here we go. The not the final video, but update video of the car here. It's been a while. It's probably been a few months since the last video I made on the old car. And pretty much everything that needs to be done is done. Now that doesn't mean it's finished, but it means it's drivable. I can get in it and take it places. I don't have a lot of miles on it. Probably got 60 miles on it, but it's a learning process. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over what we've pretty much done so far, and I think I might just start the body. So starting here, this is the passenger side fender. If you remember any of the other videos or pictures or anything you've seen, the old fender had a big hole right here, bigger than my hand, and we replaced that. We found this fender up in Pennsylvania for 25 bucks, and it had no damage to it. I mean, you can see I had to knock a few dents out, and I also had to fill a few dents in that I couldn't knock out. So other than that, I sanded it down to bare metal, and it's got about 6 coats of primer on it, and it's really smooth. It's got some dirt and grease on it, but right now it's no big deal. But this one turned out pretty good. None of the panels are really lined up, as you can see here from these bolts. They're just kind of on there. But so yeah, this looks pretty good. And then this door, it's obviously this door was a yellow. It's yellow, and it was off a coupe. Not a coupe. Yeah, I guess you could call it a coupe. Not a hatchback. So we had to replace the glass, or swap the window from our old door into this one, because our old door also was rusted out right here. It kind of was like a big area between the fender and the door here that was rusted out and gone. So this is the only thing that's not really primered yet. It's sanded down, and I filled 1 or 2 little dents, and it's got some nicks and stuff in it, but it's some simple work. So that's no big deal there. You get back on the corner panel here. There's 2 spots. Let me see if I can get a... You can see, I don't know if you would pick it up in a video here, but right here where I'm outlining was really rusted out, so I was able to cut out the metal and weld a new piece in. So that turned out pretty good. And this isn't the best work here. I had to do a whole bunch of filler on this because it was previously worked on, and it had, from where I cut that metal out, it had about a 1/4 inch of body filler from whenever before. So you can still see there's some pitting and stuff I need to fill in, but for right now it's pretty good. So that was welded in there, and also it's kind of hard to see right here down at the corner. This was a patch I had cut out and welded in, so I welded that up as well. Then I sanded it down. This isn't the best. This was kind of a rush job because I needed to get it done for a certain event. But this has about 3 coats of primer on it, and it turned out pretty good as well. So I'm pretty pleased with this side. It could be better, but for my level of work, it's pretty good. So that's that whole side there. It had a lot of work involved in it. And come around to the back, its bumper is a replacement bumper. Our old one was completely rotten on the inside where the metal support is. So we were able to pick this one up and 2 others for a pretty cheap price. So that's going to get painted because obviously it's red. And then this back plate here, you can see it has some deep rust pitting throughout it that I have yet to fix, but that's down the road. It's pretty simple, just a little hit of a flap disc, and then come back and fill it in a little bit with some body filler or something just to smooth it out. Now down here, next to the license plate, you can see right there, I never covered it, but this was pretty much rotten out completely behind the license plate. So I was able to cut that whole thing out and put a new piece of strip of metal in there and grind it down as best I can. So all that's going to take is a little body filler just to smooth it out and paint it over. So that turned out pretty good as well. That was some of the first welding I did, was right there. Up here to the spoiler pieces, I haven't taken these off yet, these end corner pieces, because I'm a little worried because I can tell that the bolt is broke off on the inside because you can't turn it, it's just loose. But they're in pretty good shape. And then the main spoiler piece here, we had taken it off of our old hatch and put it on our new one here. This hatch right here we also bought. You can see it's a little different. It has chrome molding instead of black that was on our car, and it's not drilled for the rear louvers bracketry. So this also, it didn't need any work at all really. It was already kind of sanded down pretty much. It could be filled. There's a little bit of pitting here. But other than that, I just took it and I put about 6 coats of primer on there. And the primer I use actually is just Rust-Oleum cans, because with my setup and air compressor, it wasn't really working too well with a gun. Spray gun, which we did on this side. So over here to this corner panel, before you can kind of see right here where it switches, the angle changes from here to there like that. This was I think this car was hit. We're not really sure, but it had to be. It was cracked up here, and as I sanded down a whole bunch of body filler, I saw where they tried to weld in, like spot weld. I can't really think of it, and try to pull a dent out by spot welding in a little rod here and using like a slide hammer. So I was able to clean that up, and then I was able to really didn't take much, some body filler here and there, and I kind of sculpted it to keep the curve going there. And then also down here, this was pretty rough. Right here where you can see where I'm circling at, that was all rotten there, so that's kind of tough because it had many body lines I had to try to follow. You can see it's kind of messed up right there. But I was able to cut that out and weld a piece in, and I was also able to, right here, this piece that goes like that was completely gone. I had to take a piece of metal and I formed it and bent it to weld in right there. And this also was all gone down here. I was able to weld a piece in there. This side, I welded in a little piece here as well. It wasn't as bad, but I had to. So that's welded right there. Another piece in, and then up underneath here I had to weld another little strip in. But this has the same amount of primer on it. We tried to use a spray gun, and we ended up using some acrylic stuff, which kind of ruined the whole process. So I had to sand it down again. I'm going to. But we went over it with some can stuff, and it turned out pretty good. You know, it looks decent. I just got to clean it up a little bit. The roof was in pretty rough condition, especially where this had the big blue decal. Underneath the decal, it was extremely pitted, and there's a dent. You can still see it. I don't know where the dent came from, but this took a lot of work. I flapped the whole roof down to basically bare metal. Took the sunroof out and filled it all in, all the pitting, to what I could do. I'm not really skilled body work. So I filled it in, and I did some primer on here as well, another some self-etching stuff and filler and regular, which is really the process I did for all of it. And it turned out pretty good. Like I said, it all needs work. It's just to a point where it doesn't need much anymore. Sunroof, I went over and just repainted this black, this metal trim piece here, and need to put some silicone around here to fill in these gaps. But other than that, the sunroof's functional. It needs some lube to open up more, but right now it's not my worry. Coming down here, as well on this A-pillar here, as well as the other side, I really didn't do any preparation. I just kind of painted over it, just so it blends in for now. This door, this is the original door, and it actually didn't need much work. As you can tell, I don't know if you can see too well, but there's a couple dents that need to get filled in here and there, and this really isn't primer. It's just like gray Walmart paint that I used, because I did this whole side of the car in that before I was really knowledgeable on anything. So just kind of left it like it is right now because it blends in. It doesn't really need much work, and finishing the body work isn't on the main priority list right now. So this door looks pretty good. It's pretty solid and all that. And coming up here, rounding the turn to the finish, this front fender, this is the original front fender. I'd say the front fenders I put the most work into. Also, with this one I took back down to bare metal, and it had a lot of pitting and dents I had to knock out and fill in. I didn't have to do any welding on these except for right here, if you can see, like this section. It was really sensitive. If you were to lean on it, it fold in and out, if you have an idea what I'm saying. And to tighten that up, I just went on the back side and I did like a whole bunch of spot welds basically throughout the whole thing, just to stretch the metal out. I had to just grind it off and fill it in. This turned out pretty good too, along with the other fender, so I'm really pleased with that. Let's see, this front header panel here, we bought another one off the guy we bought the hatch from, but we ended up just using ours. This was pretty simple. It's only 3 coats of primer. I just kind of took the decal off. There's a little pits left, but it's turned out pretty good. The main problem was you can't really see, but where this fender, it has 2 bolts that bolt right into the back of this, and this isn't metal. This is some sort of plastic or formed material. It was stripped out, so we had to fill those in. I used JB Weld and a JB Water Weld to stuff the holes, and then we just kind of tapped them for threads with the self-threading bolts that were with it, so this fits again. And the last pieces here is this front cowl area. I'd like to get down there. You can see it's all rusted out, but apparently you need to take the windshield. There's a whole bunch of spot welds and all that. So this is the last thing that really needs work, and it doesn't look that bad, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. So there's that. And then this hood, our hood was completely rusted. This is a Cobra, King Cobra hood. You can kind of see the Cobra there. But I like it like it is right now, so I ain't going to go bother painting it and anything. And this is the original hood scoop off of our old hood. So our old one was, right here you can see some paint bubbling up, was completely rusted in basically all 4 corners, so this is functional, so that makes me happy. So that's all the body work. I guess the next thing we'll go to is the interior here. This video is going to be quite long. I think I might make a 2-part video. So the next thing I did was, this whole floor was rotted out, and I didn't buy 4 pans just because I thought I wouldn't need it. But you can see here, this whole area coming up and around, that was all rotted out, so I cut that out and welded in new pieces. There's a big hole right back there. You can see some seam sealer that was rotted out and gone. Underneath there, back in the spare tire area, there's a whole bunch of rotted areas, little small sections, 2x2 inch areas that I cut out and welded in. And also there's another one right over there by like a drain plug type thing that was rotten, so I welded that in. So that's the driver's side. Oh, and there's a little patch I had to do right here. So that's the driver's side. So it was a great deal of floor replacement needed on the driver's side, and then the passenger side is almost worse, if you can believe it, I guess. I don't know. So you can't really see, this chair doesn't fold up. On the passenger side here, there's a spot I welded in right here. And also down here, that's a little square welded in, probably about 5 inches long by like 2 inches wide. Right here where the seat mounts, I had to make a new area for the seat to mount because that was rusted and gone. And then starting from back underneath the seat, it runs up here, and then it was rusted out all along here, and then you can see all the way up here. There's a new piece of metal along in there that I had to weld in. Basically, this whole front floor was gone. So that was probably a month long, every day working on it, cutting, measuring, and all that stuff. But it's solid. Ain't going nowhere. It's definitely welded in the good. After I did all the body work and floors, I looked at my welder over there and realized I had used a whole 11-pound spool of welding wire. So, you know. So I'm going to call this part 1, body work and floor. And then the next section, or the part 2 video, which will go up at the same time, will be the mechanical aspect of the car, because we also did some work with that. So I hope you enjoyed this part, and I'm probably going to upload these relatively at the same time since I wanted it to be a one-piece video to begin with, but we're just going to leave it as 2 for now. So I'll be right back with part 2. Alright, back for part 2. I'd really keep it one piece, but my computer really can't handle loading a video in like Movie Maker that's so long it just overheats and shuts off. But anyway, that's beside the point. We're gonna start here for the engine. So it's a 302 out of a 73 Mustang. It's got about 100,000 miles on it. Really smooth running engine when you get it to run right, I guess. So the first thing we did when we got it, we tore it all apart, took the heads off, took the oil pan off, and we only checked one bearing for some reason, one of the the rod bearings, and it seemed to be good. No signs of wear, so we really didn't bother with it. We probably should have checked all of them, but you know, 100,000 mile 302 is probably pretty good. So other than that, we Well, when we first got it, before we took the heads off, it was free. We went to the dude, and it was not the engine. The price wasn't free, but it was not locked up. So we got back and tried it, and it seemed to be locked up. So I got really angry because I was confused. I paid money for a free turning engine. So we took it apart and we diagnosed it as a stuck valve. So we tried to unstick the valves, and it was like two or three valves that were stuck. One was really stuck, and from us putting a breaker bar on the main uh, crank pulley bolt down there, trying to turn it over. When we took it apart, we had bent the push rods. That's how hard we were trying to turn this engine over. So we got a new set of push rods in there, stock length, nothing fancy, and cleaned the valves up. I took the heads and I took a grinding compound and I ground new valve seats into it, well, on each individual valve, and it seemed to work pretty good. There's new gaskets throughout. We put a new water pump on there. We put it was a while ago. I'm trying to remember here. New water pump, new head gaskets, new head bolts, new oil pan. We did put a new oil pan in there. This isn't a Mustang II specific oil pan. This is a regular 302 front sump oil pan. And the way we got this to fit was, if you can look in there, right past that, down here, this is about a 1-inch spacer. We used just a regular piece of steel tube type stuff, and we have a couple grade 8 washers on each side to make it fit. It clears the rack fine. It is tight on clearance down there, but it doesn't rub at all. So that's how we got this to fit with that regular oil pan. The engine recent upgrades would be this Edelbrock Performer, not a RPM, just a regular Performer 4-barrel intake, and to go on top of that, a Holley 4160 600 CFM carb. And the reason I went with that is because I was using the old standard Motorcraft 2150, I believe it is, or just a 2100. And the choke was broke off, and this is off of a V6, the 2.8 V6 that came out of the car. And the reason I was using this one is because the carburetor on the V8, this throttle shaft here, was seized in there, and in the process of trying to get it unstuck, which was grim anyway, I broke a mounting ear off here for the bolt. So I just took the main jets out of the old one and put it in here, and took the float out and put it in there, and I got it to run, but it wasn't running right, and I had a manual choke rigged up, and it got me around the driveway, but it was kind of crappy. So ever since we put this new 4-barrel setup on there, with the electric choke, it's really a pleasure to have it fire right up, and it's really responsive now, and it's really nice to drive. I really enjoy it. But so other upgrades would be these Hedman Mustang II specific long tube headers, and the only reason we did that is because these are about $200, and a set of regular exhaust manifolds for a Mustang II would have been about the same price used. So we just went with the performance type deal, and we didn't really paint them up right, so it burnt off, but I gotta take the engine back out, which I'll get to anyway. So the next thing we didn't have a V8 radiator, so we went and found this one. This is a 3-row aluminum radiator, which I got off eBay from Uncle Cooling or something like that. If I remember, I'll try to find a link to it. It's supposed to be for like a 1964 Mustang with a 5-liter swap. And the reason the 5-liter swap is important is so you get the inlet and outlet ports on the right side. So it fits between the spots of the old radiator. It's just not the same size. So the way we got away with cooling this is we went and I did some research, and everybody uses the Taurus electric fans. Well, I couldn't find any in the junkyard because all the Tauruses, there are plenty of them, but all the fans were gone. So I did some more research and found that this, I don't know if you'll see it, this is the control for the fan. This is off of a Volvo. I believe it was like an S40, the most common sedan Volvo made. I guess there's plenty of them in the junkyard, just like Taurus's. But anyway, this is a 2-speed fan. Apparently, it has the same motor as the Taurus. And this is the controller here. This doesn't control by temperature. This is a relay box. So I got this ran wires up into the cab there to a 2-way switch, This runs off of ground, so instead of being grounded, this has positive to it all the time, and your switch grounds out to turn the fan on, if that makes any sense. So the high and low speed, it does pretty well on both settings. It keeps it around 200 degrees running, which is very well for me. I have a 195 degree thermostat in here, which keeps it working pretty good. I'd like it to be a little lower, but we'll get around to that. So that's the radiator setup, which is pretty important because you can't really find V8 radiators for a Mustang II. I think someone's starting to reproduce them, but they're $500. If I'm not mistaken. But also, the way I got this on here is sort of a rig. I got this metal strapping type deal. It's probably about 1/8 of an inch thick. I just got a 7/16 bolt through everything here. And then to put this fan on, it protrudes a little bit in the front there, so I have some washers for spacers, and I have it 3 contact points, I believe. So, and it's all tightened up really well, and when I shake, I can come from the fan, shake this, shakes the whole car, so it's not going to fall off and destroy the radiator. So that's my setup for the cooling on this car. If you have any questions, please let me know. I can help you out, because I basically built this setup here. And I know it's really important because no one can find anything. So the next thing we did was simply just went to the junkyard, found a 1980 Mustang, replaced the power steering pump because ours was broken on the return. The return thing down the bottom is plastic that broke off, so he put a new one on here, used one, I guess you could say, and then a new main pressure line because that was really fun to replace down there. And then the next thing, most recent thing I did, which we needed to do with this electric fan, since this electric fan draws about 50 or 60 amps, I'm not very sure. We had the V6 alternator on there, stock, which would be a 1G alternator Ford produced. It was about 55 amps, if I can remember correctly, and it did good, but the belt squealed when you put any load on it. So I took that off and I put the 73 alternator that came with this engine on there. And it did the same thing, and for that I had rigged up a external regulator over here instead of in the original spot. But I had so much trouble with it, I went and did some research and I got a 3G alternator off of a Taurus, a 92. And this is identified as a 95 amp, not the 135, because with a 135 amp alternator, a single V-belt pulley will constantly squeal at idle because it draws so much power. So at the 95 amp, I can power my high beams, my brake lights, 4-ways, electric fan on high, everything good to go, and not have the belt squeak at all. Also, it's internally cooled with a fan, and it's internally regulated, so all I had to do was, this is just temporary wiring, but it's a pretty simple setup. Main battery to the battery output, and then it has a, you need a hot all the time to the battery so it can do something with the stator, I believe, and then you need the exciter wire, which also is hot all the time. I guess it has something to do with the internal, but the way I ran this exciter wire over here would be the stock plug has this little red wire here, and I did a spade connector off of that to the wire from the alternator, and then this red one runs over to where the old external voltage regulator would have been, right here. And since it needs to be hot all the time, these two wires that go into the same port on this plug are hot when the key is on, so I just stuck a jumper wire in there for temporary purposes and it works fine. So that's my alternator set up. Like I said, any questions, please let me know. So the next thing, ignition system is stock. It has relatively new spark plugs. When we cleaned the engine, I just put a new set of points in it the other day, which I was driving down the road trying to go to the first car show and they came out of adjustment and I had to get towed home. But anyway, that's a story for later. The next thing we got here is a new brake booster, a new brake master cylinder and reservoir, and all new nickel copper lines, whatever you call it, all the way to the passenger side on the front, both in the rear, and we ran out a line, so we found a nice steel piece that was that ran from here to the passenger side. We cut that and used that for the driver's side. So all new fittings and brake lines throughout the whole thing, and same with the tube, the brake hoses that run in here. You can't really see them, I don't think, They're new, and so is there's a distribution block back on the rear axle that we replaced as well. So suspension-wise, which I could show you, we took and replaced the upper control arm bushings. We replaced both upper and lower ball joints on both sides. We replaced the shock on the inside, and we basically cleaned it all up. It has stock tire rods, which need to get replaced because it's a little shaky. And then for the brakes, we got stock size, just all new rotors and calipers that had some extra engine paint painted in blue, and new pads. And then we also put new wheel bearings in our narrow wheel bearings up front. So the suspension was pretty much gone through. And then in the back here, all we did was put new, you can see they're blue here, new shock absorbers on each side, and you can see that new brake line running through. These shackles probably need to be replaced here for the rear leaf springs, but it rides pretty good. That's suspension. The gas tank is the stock one. It had so much rust in it, I had to patch it. I tried to weld it. I put JB weld on there, and it holds, but it leaks when you fill it all the way up. It drips. And there's a custom-made straps. They're just some metal strapping that I doubled up and welded across. They're probably about an 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick all the way around. And then you can see I just did a custom bolt setup up top there. It holds. It's really strong, and I trust it, but we're going to invest in a new tank and straps here shortly. So that's that set up. My tires and wheels. These are 16-inch 4-lug off of a Fox body Mustang. I believe it was an '89. It has the same bolt pattern and it fits. In the rear, the tire I'm running is what is it? A 245 50 16. Now this fits, but there is some slight rubbing on the inner sidewall, and I did have to do a little clearancing on the passenger side. I can't remember, but it was a little something was sticking out, molded into the body that I hammered in. Didn't seem to affect anything, so they fit pretty well. On the front, now that's where it gets a little tricky with these wheels, these rims. The fronts are 205s 55 16. Got these all from the same guy, same tires there on the wheels. Now, I noticed after running it and taking the fender off, these are alloy aluminum wheels, and I noticed there's a pile of shavings because the control arm is a stamped piece of metal, so it's got like a U shape, if you can imagine, a little lip here. And there was a pile of aluminum sitting in there, so all I did was take the grinder, grinded that whole thing off, and grinded about 1 inch back. So I took a whole crap load of metal off my control arms to make these wheels fit, and they do fit just fine. And I personally don't think I hindered the structural integrity of the control arms at all. So that's my wheel setup. That's also a tricky thing to get right on this car. Personally, I think it looks pretty good with these Mustang Fox body wheels. So what else? I don't want to miss anything because this is the big video. Transmission, stock C4 out of the V6 from the V6 car, which is this. We got put a new filter, which I had to custom make. I bought it for a C4 for this gear car, but I had to trim some off. It was really weird. Filter and new gasket on there, and new torque converter when we first put it in. And recently I just replaced the vacuum control module, which is up underneath of it because it wasn't shifting right. And it really wasn't a problem. It ended up being that I guess since the transmission sat so long, it had gummed up in a few areas, so after I drove it a while it freed up. So it works kind of good right now. It's still got some bugs, which is next on the list. I'm running no kickdown because the reason is because a hard to find part along with the radiator and all that other stuff is the bell housing. Mustang II uses 141 tooth bell housing and special torque converter and flex plate and all that stuff. So I said, you know, that's too much work trying to find it and money, so I bought a 157 tooth, which is common. I clearanced the tunnel there for the transmission. You can't really see it. I just took it and banged it with a ball peen hammer for about 45 minutes and made it fit. Looks pretty good. So that's how I got that set up to work. I had to custom make a transmission cross member here for my dual exhaust setup because they have double hump is what it's called. It has two humps in it for dual exhaust, but I just took mine, cut the end off one, and just built my own bracketry and welded it back on to make it fit. Exhaust setup is just two 24-inch glass packs right now. It used to have a 90-degree there, but it backfired, come to the driveway and shot it off. But this all has to come out anyway. And that's pretty much it. I wish I could remember everything, but that's the main parts for it. I know I've been kind of rambling on here. Also, the electrical. Basically, it's got a new headlight here. It's got a new socket and wires for that turn signal over there. In the back, I'd say 90% of the sockets, the light bulb sockets and wiring, needed to be redone. So I just kind of butt connected and all that stuff, put new ones in there. And all the lights are functional, high beams, 4-ways, turn signals. Flasher had to be replaced, the turn signal flashers, which are kind of a pain because the one's in the top, so I just actually built a little jumper and extended it out probably 6 inches so it's easy to reach because the fuse box is a pain to get to. Jeez. Oh, inside here, this is supposed to be the last one. Back there in the, I guess, trunk compartment, that has this whole inside of the car has been sprayed with a rust inhibitor paint. So with the roof and all that stuff, that's just dust. Not rust, it's dust. The whole thing's been sprayed with a rust inhibitor, and in the back is rubber coated, and from where the back seat goes all the way up to the front has 2 coats of bed liner spray on it. So it's durable. I think that's pretty much it, fellas. I hope I didn't miss anything. I know I did, but that's just most of it. Like I said, any questions? I'm pretty fluent with this car right now because I've been through almost every single thing of it. Electrical, body work, mechanical, transmission, and all the little things. But any questions, let me know. And the thing that's really hindering me now is the front main pump seal on the transmission has gone bad, so after I drive it for like 10 miles, it just starts spewing fluid out. So that kind of sucks, but to get to the transmission, I got to pull the whole engine out, which means everything has to come out, so I'm kind of angry, but pull the engine out, I'll get the transmission rebuilt. I want to put a shift kit in there, just a mild one, something to give it a little kick when it shifts. I'm thinking about while the engine's out, not rebuilding it because I don't have the money, and this car really ain't a racer, but I'm going to think about putting a mild cam in there just so I can do it while the engine's out, because I can always swap the heads in the car. But that's my plans for actually next week. I'm going to take it to the local car show here Friday, because I'll never know what's going to happen. And then the week after this, I'm going to pull this engine out and get to work on it again. So I can cruise it around for now. It's real fun. It's actually a quick little car for being a stock 302. It really gets up and moves, surprises you. And once again, any questions, please let me know. I know a lot about this car, so I can try to help you. And thanks for watching, and enjoy your day. Thank you.